Thank you. John has constructed this, or articulated this broad mosaic of privacy laws and regulations now that spans decades. I'm actually just going to pick up on one area that John was alluding to at the end of his remarks, in this idea of online advertising or behavioral advertising. And the reason I'm going to focus on that is because technology is allowing a sea change, or pushing a sea change in the way we all conduct business, whether we know it or not, online. What I'm talking about is it's a paradigm shift in the amount of data about us as individuals that is made available to companies for commercial purposes, the way that data is used, and the level of control or lack thereof, depending on the circumstances, that we as users of the internet have with respect to our personal information. And what, again, alluding to what John was talking about, what we're really talking about is the ability to target advertising to you more effectively. So, a couple of sort of rudimentary examples. Many of you have probably heard of the idea of a cookie. Until 10 years ago, I thought a cookie was something that I took out of a jar and ate too many of. But turns out that cookies have this reality, this life in the internet ecosystem, and it's a way, among other things, to track what we all do online. So here's an example. You go onto a website, and an advertising network, an online advertising network that has a business relationship with that website will place a cookie on your computer. Now, that's not a nefarious thing. It doesn't hurt your computer. And it allows them at the level of the computer you're working on to know that you're on that website. And it may deliver advertising to you. That advertising network may deliver advertising to you based on the website that you're on and what that advertising network might be able to figure out about you based on that website. Where it gets interesting is when you click to another website that might be entirely unrelated to that first website. And if that second website also has a relationship with that advertising network, now all of a sudden the advertising network knows how you're surfing the web, your activities over time, from one website to another, your transactions, the things you click on, the things you show interest in. And in that way, a profile of you or a profile of this user that's using this computer develops. And with that profile, an advertising network or a search engine can deliver advertising to you in a more targeted fashion. So you click from a website, a travel website where you're looking up plane tickets for a trip to New York, and you then go on a website where you're interested in, the subject matter of which is baseball memorabilia. All of a sudden you might be delivered an advertisement on your screen for Mets tickets 2 weeks from now. So I'm a lawyer, not a technologist, so that's how I have to understand these things. But that is a rudimentary example of what we're talking about. Another rudimentary example, or not, depending on what chair you sit in, is let's say you have, you're doing a search on Google or some other search engine, but you also have a relationship with that search engine for some other service. Like maybe your email account is with the company where you're doing the search. You're doing a Google search and you have a Gmail account. Google has now accumulating information from you through different sources, and the information that derives is distinct depending on the service you're using. It allows a company like that to blend that information and start developing an even more detailed and refined profile of your interests on the web at that moment, as you're surfing, and as it relates to previous activities you've engaged in. In fact, some of these services actually read your emails. So you might be having an email exchange with somebody about this new car you're thinking about getting. It looks like you've narrowed it down to an Infiniti and Toyota or whatever, and all of a sudden you've got ads being delivered to you from the Toyota dealership 3 blocks from your house. That is a paradigm shift over the last X number of years as the technology has developed in the way we interact with the internet, in the way in which advertisers and owners of publishing space on the internet interact with us. It's not a bad thing. Some people think it's a very bad thing on its face. I disagree. I think it's not a bad thing on its face. In fact, it could be a very good thing for all of us for a number of reasons. One, advertising is the fuel, at least one of the big fuels or pillars of the internet. One of the reasons that we all enjoy free services, that there is investment in advanced technology over the internet, is because it is supported by advertisers. But for that, it's in the same way you can turn on broadcast television and watch it for free because it's advertiser supported. This is philosophically an extension of that. So better ways to advertise over the internet or to deliver advertising over the internet is potentially a better rocket fuel for innovation over the internet. The second reason why it's not necessarily problematic is that you don't want more information, you don't want more advertising, you want better advertising. If there are ways to figure out what you're really interested in so that you don't get junk and spam, but information that's actually interesting to you, you really do want to go to the Mets game 2 weeks from now, and you've been wondering whether you're going to get good tickets, that's value to you. The problem, of course, is that this is your data. What you do, who you are, where you're going, where you're web surfing, this is your data. And we, as members of the internet ecosystem, have an obligation to protect it. The good news is I think there's a way to do it. We believe there's absolutely a way to do it, and it involves the coordination or buy-in by everybody in this sphere. ISPs, search engines, advertising networks. So this sea change that I'm talking about is nothing to be afraid of. It's a valuable change in the way we conduct commerce on the web, but it does pose challenges in the realm of data privacy. At AT&T, we basically feel that there is a way to get there, and there's evidence to believe that we are getting there productively. And we think that the way to get there is built on several pillars. By getting there, I mean getting to a realm where we can take advantage of these technologies at the same time that you all feel comfortable that you're being protected when you're engaged in online activities. It starts with a basic notion of transparency. You should know what is happening with your data. And some of you who have familiarity with these issues have probably heard these concepts of opt-in versus opt-out. Opt-in is, in its most basic concept, we're going to do these things with your data unless you say don't. Opt-in is, we are going to do these things with your data if you tell us it's okay. And we have in the policy sphere, there is, frankly, a fixation on the idea of these basic ideas of opt-in versus opt-out, with the idea being that opt-in is always good and opt-out is always bad. But there are plenty of bad opt-ins, because making you read or putting in front of you 25 pages of a privacy agreement that's saying, are you okay, is not a particularly good way of communicating information to you. Having 15 different, as a company, maybe a search engine or an advertising network, having 15 different privacy policies related to 15 different products, sure, you may have technically been made aware of them, but is it really helpful to you? Is it really a way to communicate concrete information? Probably not. So we generally reject a fixation or tying ourselves to these antiquated notions and instead focus on common sense. Are you communicating as a company that engages in online commerce and that would use and collect individuals' data to do it? Are you communicating what is happening with that data when it's happening? Second, control. These same technologies, why would we have a next generation technology online advertising system and first generation control technologies for consumers? That makes no sense. What we need to do is take advantage of that same technology and give consumers more control over what happens. So instead of a static notice and consent system where we say, here's what's happening with your data, here's what we're going to do with your data. Okay? Click. or this is what we're going to do, let us know if you have a problem with that. And that's the last time the customer ever interacts with us in that sense. We believe that we should use technology to give consumers control in a more real-time basis. Here's what's happening to your data right now. You get an advertisement on your screen. That information about why you got that advertisement and the data that was collected and the way it was used to get you that targeted advertisement would be available right there. Or you could click on a standard icon and you'd go right to data information on that, as opposed to having signed up or agreed to something 6 weeks prior and having never thought again about that 15-page privacy policy that you read. So we think using technology tools to give customers actual real-time control, something closer to real-time control, is appropriate. Finally, it's got to be comprehensive. I have a little bit of this is a little bit funny to me because Congress has taken a growing interest in these issues and has held hearings in both the Senate and the House on behavioral advertising, which I've been describing to you. And AT&T and other ISPs keep getting invited to these hearings. And we keep going because that's what we do and because we potentially have something helpful to say. But it's somewhat funny to us because we are not the companies principally engaged in these activities. As an ISP, I can tell you that that is not the core of our business. We are an advertiser, we are a publisher of internet content, but we are not particularly notable in this regard. We're like thousands of other companies who do business with advertising networks online. And there tends to be a focus on the network companies as opposed to the internet content and search companies who are actually deeply engaged in this business. So what we have advocated for is whatever that framework is, we can all come to it together potentially, but let's not focus on one set of players. Let's make sure that the entire ecosystem has bought into a framework, a legal and philosophical framework for the use and collection of individual data. So we think that if we focus on those major pillars, work together, there's nothing particularly problematic behind the idea of enhanced forms of online commerce, and that actually this could fuel even further innovation. So a little note on where things stand in the policy realm in DC on this. I was here earlier during the preemption discussion. There was a lot of back and forth about the bona fides of people's Midwestern roots. I just want to clarify, I live in DC. I am not from DC. I'm from Michigan. I'm an observer there in DC. But this is what I observe. The FTC has taken some interest in these issues. As a matter of fact, as we sit here, the FTC is finishing up a day-long set of roundtable discussions on these very topics, and they're going to continue that. In late 2008, the FTC issued some staff proposed guidelines for behavioral advertising. In February of this year, it adopted a more detailed set of guidelines for self-regulation for these purposes. And a lot of what they ultimately conclude in this 50-page report revolves around some of the same concepts that we've been talking about: transparency, control, true and concrete forms of consent. But there will be more to come on that, because I will tell you that there are voices, I think, within that agency who are more or less skeptical of self-regulation than others. So I think that is a game that is still afoot at the Federal Trade Commission. In addition, as John mentioned, Congress is focusing on these issues. We have been anticipating a bill out of the House, potentially a joint bill out of the House Commerce and House Oversight subcommittees. We haven't seen that yet. There have been hearings. We've testified at some of them. Look, we all read the paper about what's going on in Congress right now. So I think this is just more of, this is going to be kicked down the road a little bit in terms of concrete legislation, but I think this is coming. Whether it's not going to happen this year, but it could be something that gains some currency in this next year's session of Congress. So I appreciate being invited to participate, and look forward to questions.